Yesterday, Friday, September 23rd, was the big day. Schools and workplaces across Maine coordinated a day for everyone to wear red in solidarity with the state's lobstermen, whose way of life has been under attack. ENGOs have been working towards shutting down the lobster fishing industry for years, but a couple weeks ago, a closely timed 1-2 assault of negative national press and accelerated regulatory activity might have actually backfired and woken up too much of the population to just how close these outside power players are to closing one of Maine's primary industries for good. People outside of fishing communities are seeing with their own eyes that the green energy lobby is no distant boogeyman. They've got the money and connections to get their narratives onto primetime network TV and into every newsfeed in the country. And they get the results they want in the courtroom seemingly every time. Now, the last couple of weeks have been kind of a blur for me, but I think it was over last weekend that I first saw some comments online that a school teacher, and I forget what school she was from, came up with the idea for her students to wear red on September 23rd as kind of a show of support for lobstermen. And this idea seemed to snowball, and before you know it, this became a statewide, pre-planned show of solidarity and support for lobstermen. And I think for many it was also a show of resistance, maybe even a touch of defiance of all of the powerful interests that want to strawman the Maine lobstermen as being harmful or threatening to the right whale. And especially when you consider the choice of language of the so-called red listing. Ooh, it's red, that's bad. And people are supposed to be scared of being red listed. And in Maine, everyone's like, yeah, red, I like it, I'll wear it, on purpose. Everyone's just embracing it, which I think is great. And it must have the people at the Monterey Bay Aquarium fuming because they thought they had just mastered the Pavlovian psychological trickery. And here Mainers are just embracing the color red like nothing ever happened. I have no way of estimating exactly how many people participated. It was at least hundreds, probably thousands if you take the whole state into account. It was a grassroots effort, but Red Friday was public knowledge, it was announced beforehand, and everyone in fishing communities had at least heard about it. And you knew the environmental NGOs had to do something. They saw that the public sentiment is overwhelmingly in favor of the lobstermen. Normal, everyday people are still in favor of the very industry they've been expending so much money trying to provoke your disapproval of. So the people whose job it is to shut down the Maine lobster fishery, and I'm emphasizing for some of you folks who just heard about this whole story since the red listing, welcome aboard, the usual suspects who are always the go-to experts sourced in the stories pushing the right whale extinction from fishermen narrative, people employed by ENGOs like England Aquarium, Conservation Law Foundation, Woods Hole, Oceana, International Fund for Animal Welfare, even the NOAA disentanglement people like Stormy Mayo, the official talking heads who we see their faces all the time in the puff pieces, and the constellation of professionals who surround and support them. Their careers, their fortunes, their chosen livelihoods depend on them continually pushing for further and further restrictions on fishermen no matter what. They're not philanthropists, they're not just nature-loving hobbyists, they are careerists. This is their career. They're hired guns, metaphorically speaking, whose job it is to incite media and regulatory pressure against their targets. So with all that being reiterated, the people whose job it is to shut down the Maine lobster fishery could not let yesterday go by without a counterattack. They wanted to try and deflate the efforts of all of the people wearing red yesterday because, try as they might, they have failed to generate an organic movement anywhere near as widespread as what Mainers decided to do yesterday. And they are terrified of losing control of the popular narrative. Now, of course, they've already lost control, as evidenced by all the folks in red. The ENGOs and their foot soldiers are a minority. We are the majority. And look at all these kids participating. Schools up and down the coast. It's awesome. And I think it bothers the ENGOs because you're taking away one of their favorite ploys. They want to be the ones to co-opt your kids for their narrative. They want to bust them off to a field trip to a place like the New England Aquarium, as we see here. They traumatize them by showing them pictures of whale entanglements. They don't explain, of course, that these aren't from the fishery they're preaching against, but they manipulate the kids' emotions. They make them draw artwork of whales wrapped in lobster gear. They use the kids for their own photo ops. Either that on a field trip, or you get activist volunteers like Bill McWeeny from Massachusetts, who used to work for the New England Aquarium and moved to Maine some years ago, founded the nonprofit Mainers Guarding Right Whales, and he comes into your school and brings these same fact-free manipulation exercises into the classroom. Makes the kids draw pictures of whales, they're trapped in lobster gear, maybe takes them outside, has them lay on the ground in the shape of a whale, and they take a picture of that. The anti-fishing folks are well acquainted with the power of getting children involved, and I think they hate it when you do it, instead of allowing them to use your kids against you. So, well done, Maine schools. And it was an impressive number of businesses making their voices heard, and I'm sure the selection of pictures I have here is not exhaustive. These are just kind of what I found this morning online. Some people sent some to me and shared some, and I found some on the official Red Friday Facebook page. A lot of them are uploaded there. People are really involved to an impressive level. Now, in the face of this kind of a grassroots movement, our opponents, they have some advantages. They have all the bigwigs on speed dial to run their narrative in the press, but it's all fluff. There's no substance. They are one-trick ponies with their whale entanglement narrative, and without further ado, let's examine how the anti-fishing lobby pushed back against Red Friday, because you knew they were going to. You might have already seen it. The ENGOs picked yesterday to feed some legacy media platforms a story about a right whale entanglement. But there's one problem. It's a recycled story. We're going to go over it. This was absolutely not newsworthy at all. It's not news. But they used their bully pulpits to blare it out there, curiously just at the exact time Red Friday was going on, to try and drown out what the real people all over Maine were saying. Now, normally, PR puppet masters who want to work their story into the press release their statements at the beginning of a week so that they can circulate it through as much of the week's news cycle as possible. And if the ENGOs had known that the attacks on fisheries a couple weeks ago were going to spark such a backlash, I think they would have thought ahead and had a counterattack ready to roll out a little bit earlier than they did. But I think that the amount of local media talking about Red Friday leading up to it this week kind of took them by surprise, and they realized they had to scramble and scrape something together, anything, to try and prop up their crumbling narrative about right whales. So they trotted out for the umpteenth time the same whale they've been following around for almost 2 years now. This is the whale that Nadine Piquenza's crew highlighted in the high-profile documentary Last of the Right Whales, which was the documentary that was having the little Q&A on stage when Matt Gilley caught New England Aquarium's Amy Knowlton in a lie spring of 2022. That was one of the stops on the Last of the Right Whales roadshow. We've put that clip out self-contained, and it was also part of the video 2023 that we put out last weekend. So this is the same whale that movie was about. They've gone out and photographed this whale a bunch of times. They named her Snow Cone back in spring of 2021, and she's been entangled in fishing gear for all of that time, and she's still alive. So first, let's note the source of this story. This isn't organically happening news. This is one of the key players in the fight against Maine fisheries. That's the New England Aquarium. They are anti-Maine lobster activists. They're the ones who generated and pushed out this story to other news platforms. New England Aquarium, which employs anti-fishing activists like Amy Knowlton, Scott Krause, etc., in advance of Red Friday, they just happened to come up with this story that they posted late on Thursday in time to feed for Newsweek to put out first thing on Friday morning. Yes, Newsweek. which I thought went out of business a few years back, but apparently Newsweek still has a website, which should be news in itself, I think, and they did their duty and blasted out New England Aquarium's story about how snow cone is still entangled, which has been true for like 18 months at this point, to try and fool unsuspecting people into thinking that this debunks Maine lobstermen's claims that they have not entangled a whale since 2004. Because you've probably seen that, right? No entanglements since 2004 in Maine lobster gear. So how is it that snow cone is entangled and she's in American waters? Well, let's look at the facts we have. What is snow cone entangled in? Time and again is described as thick, heavy rope. Well, alarm bells should be going off when you read that description because Maine lobstermen do not use rope that is thick, nor is it heavy. Do a little research and you will see that yes, snow cone's entanglement is in the kind of rope that is illegal for lobstermen in the US to fish with. It's the kind of rope that floats on the surface and is used prominently in the Canadian snow crab fishery, which we have no jurisdiction over whatsoever, and the whole 90% reduction that's about to be imposed on Maine's lobster fishery, that reduction doesn't affect the snow crab fishery, which tends to be the only gear found stuck to these whales. Snow cone is a whale that, as of January of this year, 9 months ago, NOAA said that they and the ENGOs had observed this whale at least a dozen separate times up to then, January 2022. I don't know how many other days they've looked at this whale this year, but it has been several. They have done some disentanglement operations on it in the past, and they've cut some of the rope out, but they left some rope in, which they say they weren't able to get. But they've regularly monitored this whale over the last 18 months. They've known about the remaining rope tangled on it, and for the most part, they've let it alone. This is an excerpt from a story, I believe from May of this year. NOAA Fisheries and their partners have discussed potential actions, but still, with all of the info gathered from recent sightings, biologists and veterinarians do not believe snow cone is currently in life-threatening danger. This is May of this year. NOAA continues, "This means we can plan and respond when the timing is right." Marinate in that for just a minute. 18 months, time and time again, they go out and take pictures of this whale. They take some rope off, but not all. And they say, you know what, snow cone's not in life-threatening danger. Of course, all the ENGOs have been raising money like mad off of this whale. It's a mother whale. It somehow became pregnant, carried to term, and gave birth, all in the midst of its life-threatening, continuing entanglement. They take some rope off, but not all, and they say, you know what, snow cone's not in life-threatening danger, but we continue to monitor the situation. We're on top of it. Red Friday happens in Maine, and suddenly snow cone is on death's door, emaciated, covered in lice. She's slowly dying. Nothing we can do. Really? You guys suddenly figured out this week of all weeks? You've been watching, waiting, planning, plotting to respond when the timing is right. Whoops! Snow cone's toast. Well, I guess you guys must have been negligent then, right? Draw your own conclusions. They either have been asleep at the wheel, or maybe it's a little cynical of me, they need snow cone to be in trouble. They need the optics. Maybe snow cone is more useful to them entangled than disentangled. They need this story to be able to put out there. They've got nothing else. They've needed to keep poor Mother Snow Cone in their back pocket to throw out there into the spotlight and say, see, this is why we need to shut down the fishery, go ropeless. Except that wouldn't have prevented Snow Cone's entanglement. Now they're saying, by the way, Snow Cone has new entanglements now, she got tangled up again. I think that's meant to imply that the new rope might finally be proof. The proof they've been trying to come up with for 18 years. Maybe this rope will finally be from the people that they are looking to put out of business. Well, once you guys do an autopsy, be sure to let us know, but I'm not holding my breath for that revelation to come true. There's one other idea I want to leave you with. So the activists, the ENGOs, they keep following around Snow Cone. And oh my gosh, Snow Cone has gotten herself entangled 237 times. It's such a travesty. How can these people keep fishing when Snow Cone just keeps going out there and bumbling into stuff? Is it maybe the other way around? Does Snow Cone have some other health issues that are causing her to be exceptionally clumsy and to keep wrapping herself up in rope? Like, have you ever seen an animal on its last legs? It's getting pretty creaky, not in great shape, kind of like Stormy Mayo, but I kid the Stormster. It's fumbling around, not doing great with basic tasks. The animal isn't taking care of itself. It can't get around well, and it's sad. But you know, maybe one of those boats that ran into Snow Cone over the years, maybe the one that ran over her calf like a year ago, maybe one of those kind of knocked a few screws loose. Maybe one of her natural predators like the great whites that do make their way around through parts of right whale territory, especially down in warmer waters, like where she was spotted off Georgia's coast at one point. Maybe one of those took a little nip out of Snow Cone, and maybe Snow Cone's got some injuries that have made her more susceptible to this whole rope thing. Or maybe Snow Cone's got some other illness affecting her. I don't know. But isn't it worth considering? Like, maybe the constant entanglement of this one particular whale, no matter how much rope they chop out of her, maybe it's actually a symptom of a deeper problem? Snow Cone might not be playing with a full deck here, and maybe hasn't been for a while. And look, if I was an animal and people decided they were gonna go around calling me Snow Cone all the time, I might end up wrapping myself in whatever rope was convenient, just so I didn't have to hear people going on and on about the plight of Snow Cone. But I don't know, maybe one of the scientists can go look into what else was going on with Snow Cone after her imminent demise. But again, I won't hold my breath. Well, time to wrap it up. Lots to come in the ensuing weeks and months. Great job to everyone who made Red Friday a big deal. You might not be able to call in favors with Newsweek, but that doesn't matter. Your voices are still being heard, and the eco groups are getting nervous. That's why they're doing what they're doing. And the next time you see someone from an ENGO blathering on about how 85% of all right whales bear scars that could have come from an entanglement from fishing gear, and then all they've got to show you is Snow Cone for the 75th time, examine closely what they're saying, and you'll discover, once again, it's all a crock. Have a good weekend.